Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. No, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Trey, do we have a setback Saturday incoming here in week 2? We've got a slate that has a few real gems on it, but other than that, I feel like I've seen nothing but complaints of games on the calendar for this week 2. And yet, when I dove into prep for this, I saw a lot of games that really piqued my interest. And I think a lot of teams that could be on upset alert here as we get the season started.
Yeah, I think on the surface, it looks like a step down from last week for sure. We don't have the big brands scoring off. We don't have the Georgia, Clemson, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, Florida, Miami triple header that we had last week. But, I mean, we have Texas playing Michigan in the big house, right? We have so many other games on this schedule that may not have the big brand name recognition, but I think are going to be absolute bangers that we look back on Saturday night and say, wow, that was a really fun game. And we might not even have time to talk about it. So I'm really excited to dive in. I'm really excited about the games this weekend. I think you're absolutely right. There's some teams that should be on hardcore upset alert this week.
Yeah, our run sheet, as we welcome you into another edition of the Three Technique college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. Our run sheet, Trey, is 4 pages long. I sent in our group text, and we're going to have to go quick because there's a lot of games that I want to get to outside of just our 3 tech big 3. And so hopefully if you're one of those people out there in the listenership that thinks, there's not much going on, hopefully we can at least direct you to one window where you see the value. And maybe you've got the YouTube, quad box going, you've got the laptop pulled up as well. Maybe you do something with the wife in the morning, but you find a primetime seat in the afternoon. That's what I think my mission is for this episode. Give you a chance to really find the value here and look forward to a loaded Saturday. We've got our big 3 coming up. We've got Saturday storylines. We've got a turbo offense that we've got to get to as well because we've got so many storylines. If you're brand new to the show, the channel, hit like and subscribe. Y'all know what to do by now. We are thrilled to have you as a part of the Jimmies and the Joes. You guys seem to really be enjoying the content right now. Our numbers continue to go up. We're thrilled to be talking college football with everyone who joins in on the live shows, everyone who listens to the podcast during the week as well, and obviously follows along on our social media. Trey, our 3 Tech Big 3. This segment brought to you by homefieldapparel.com. The Good brand has given us a very good code that you can use for 15% off. 3 Tech Pod gets you 15% off your entire first order. You can also use the link in our bio if you would like to support the show. You mentioned the Big House has everybody's attention. If you are centered on one game this weekend, it is number 4 Texas on the road at number 9 Michigan, 11 a.m. It's Fox's big game kickoff, big noon kickoff. Texas 7.5-point favorites in Ann Arbor. Does that line seem a little high to you, or is this right at about what you expected given Michigan's struggles and Texas's offensive palooza in week 1?
It feels like a ton of points. I'll be honest. When I saw that line without really thinking about the matchup, it seemed like a ton of points. But really, when you think about what both of these teams put on the field last Saturday, it really doesn't seem like a ton of points, right? It seems about right if you're just judging it in the vacuum of last Saturday. I think when this line was first released back in the spring, it was like teetering between 1.5 to 2.5 for Texas. So a big jump, obviously, once we've seen these two teams on the field. But again, makes sense when you think about the games against Colorado State and Fresno State last week.
For me, when I look at the film from both of these games, and I've watched both games back in preparation for this, Texas has an air force out wide. In fact, one of their wide receivers said that we have 2 4x100 relay teams in this wide receiver room. I mean, Texas is speed upon speed at their skill positions. The offensive line, I think, might be the unit that I trust the most out of both sides of the football for either team. So when I kind of look at what my rubric says, which I wrote on our Substack, my rubric underwent a couple of tweaks this week after basically getting stonewalled on picks last week. It was not a great week for your boy. I had to look at where I think each team has the advantage and which team has their X factor that's going to shine through. And I'll be honest, Trey, it's really hard for me to think that Michigan has many advantages. I know you're really high on them muddying this game up. I'll turn it over to you in just a moment. But I tell you what, looking at what Texas can do offensively, and I texted you this earlier, they're going to make Michigan cover every square inch of that football field on Saturday morning. I don't know if Michigan has the ability to make Texas's defense do the exact same. And so if this is a rock fight, one of those teams has to break the rock fight through an explosive play or two, right? That's normally what we see. A chunk play ends up being the difference. If I had to pick one of those teams to break through with a chunk play, I'm taking the Longhorns.
Yeah, if it's a chunk play or if it's a big explosive play that decides this game, it's absolutely going to go in Texas's way. I think there's really not a lot you could do to push back against that argument. I think the path to victory for Michigan is much different than relying on chunk plays, though. I think the path to victory for Michigan is muddy it up, kind of take the air out of the football, trust your offensive line. I know the offensive line didn't look great against Fresno State at times last week, but just finding rhythm offensively, staying in that rhythm, staying ahead of the chains, and taking the air out of the football, keeping the ball out of Quinn Ewers' hands. And when Quinn does have the football in his hands, forcing him to make mistakes through the pass rush, through that really good secondary that Quinn's going to have to throw into. Because I know that he has a ton of great wide receivers. They looked amazing against Colorado State last week, but this is an elite Michigan secondary still. This is elite Michigan defense still that shut down a really respectable offense that Fresno State brought to Ann Arbor last week. So I'm not ready to throw Michigan's chances completely out of the water. I think their path to victory is more narrow than Texas because Texas can rely on those big plays, maybe a busted coverage or two, but don't sleep on Quinn Ewers' ability to make a mistake that changes this game, especially facing a raucous road crowd and going up against a defense that led the team to a national championship last year and brings a lot of guys back from that unit.
You pointed out when we were talking about this game in preparation, Michigan's offensive woes seemed to come back to the fact that they didn't have one quarterback just steering the ship through the entire game, right? As far as using Warren and Alex Orji, from what you watched the Wolverines put out there against Fresno State, is there one quarterback that you prefer the offense behind? And is there any world in which Sharon Moore can run those two quarterbacks out there and succeed? Because man, they weren't able to do it against Fresno State. I'm hard pressed to believe that they're going to do it against the Longhorns.
It feels like it needs to be Davis Warren's team for the most part. He's the guy that they trust to actually throw the football, right? Because Alex Orji attempted 2 passes the whole game on Saturday night. So to me, I really didn't like that they didn't let Warren get into a rhythm throughout that entire football game. Every other play, it seemed like Alex Orji was coming in to run the same zone read, the same handoff concept. It didn't really do a lot for me. It looked like they were trying to experiment with a lot of different things offensively and not really letting Davis Warren get into a rhythm. And that's what he needs. He needs the reps. He needs that time to prepare. Once he started getting more of the reps towards the end of the game, the fourth quarter, he led a really nice drive, made a couple good throws to extend the drive. So he has some arm talent there. He has something to work with. But he just didn't really get into a rhythm. He didn't really build chemistry with his receivers. It's a whole new receiving core, too, that Michigan's throwing out there. So I really didn't like that strategy from Sharon Moore and company. I'm really interested to see what it looks like this week. I think we're going to see Alex Orji only in very certain situations, right? It's 3rd and 3. We need to pick up a first down. We need to, all get behind the line and just push forward.
Student body left, student body right.
Exactly. I think that's a great spot for Alex Orji, maybe similar to how Notre Dame ran Riley Leonard last week down the stretch to make some plays and convert some first downs and keep the ball moving on offense. But I don't think we need to have a ton of the Alex Orji experience on the offensive side of the ball. It doesn't need to be every other play like it was at times against Fresno State.
Fair enough. I'll let the Twitter sphere run with that one. Give me your pick. Give me your pick here. We're on opposite ends of this coin. You've got Michigan plus 7.5. What do you ultimately see the difference being that keeps Michigan within that point scheme? And do you have the Wolverines winning outright?
Man, I know you're tweaking your formula, but my formula really does tend to love really good defenses at home, especially with a big number like this. 7.5 is just a lot of points.
It is.
And I feel like it's overreacting to what we saw on the field on Saturday. I don't think if you looked at the advanced metrics, they would have this as a 7.5 point game. I haven't done the math on the SP Plus ratings, but it just feels like too many points. And I think Michigan knows that they are at a disadvantage when you compare the two offenses. They know they need to take the air out of the football, and I think that's what they're going to do to try to kind of strangle out at least a close game. The path to victory is completely taking the air out of the football, having a couple 8-9 minute drives and either converting with a field goal or punching it into the end zone. But I think the path to a cover is much more sure. I think Texas wins this game outright, but 7.5 is just too many points for me on the road.
Will Johnson pick six like he had last week would certainly help.
That is on the table, right? Like that's not an outlandish thing to ask for.
Yeah,
you're going to put against a quarterback that has thrown some interceptions when he faces pressure.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I tell you what, I've hit historically between 75 and 80% on outright winners since we've been doing this show. But against the spread, man, I've hit a cold streak. Whether it be the Ledger bets last season to start this year, we went 0-3 in the Ledger. So it's not been a great start for your boy. So I did have to do some soul searching over the weekend. And, if I'm not overreacting, I'm not trying. So we're going to go the other way. We're going to go Texas minus the number. And here's why. I agree with you on a lot of your points. I think Michigan is going to be able to take the air out of the football and shorten this game. So I don't think that this is going to be some sort of crazy shootout. But I do think if you're telling me that I only need to win this game by 10, which is what I think I have Texas ultimately doing anyway, I feel pretty confident in taking the Longhorns to win 24-14, something like that, right? Specifically when I look at what Texas's linebackers have to do in this game. They have to be able to stop the run. Heck, Fresno State's linebacking crew did that a little bit this last week. Now, with Sharon Moore being very vanilla and just charge straight ahead 3 yards in a cloud of dust, maybe. But we'll see if they can withstand a very good defensive line from Texas, albeit maybe some question marks in the interior, but an elite linebacking core. Also, when Davis Warren did throw the football and when he needed a big play, who did he look for? He looked for Colson Loveland, their tight end. If the linebackers and safeties can take Loveland out of the equation and kind of take away that safety blanket, I think the Wolverines are in a world of hurt potentially offensively. So I'll take Texas all the speed that they have to find a way to score maybe 3 touchdowns as opposed to 2. They tack on a field goal maybe late to cover this game, put it out of reach. I'll take the Longhorns 24-14. We'd love to know what you guys have this game as. No doubt this will be the most watched game on the weekend. So bring your takes at 3TechPod. Let us know in the comments. Tweet at us, DM us on Instagram, wherever you'd like to reach out. We would love to have that conversation with you. Moving on, we've got the battle for the Cy-Hawk Trophy, Trey, in Iowa City. I've got some family members that are particularly invested in this one. As number 25, Iowa hosts Iowa State. The Hawkeyes are 2.5-point favorites, 2:30 p.m. on CBS. Trey, the vaunted Iowa offense scored 40 points last week. What did you make from week 1 of the Hawkeyes without a Ferentz on the sideline? And do you think they can repeat anything close to that against the Clones?
I mean, is it a chicken egg situation? Is Ferentz the complete absence of Ferentz on the sideline finally unlocking the Iowa offense? I don't know. We might need to ask some questions if they look back at their old self this weekend in the Cyhawk game. But man, I kept pinning through the stats, and I went back and watched a little bit of this game, especially the second half, because I was just looking for something, right? I was looking like, okay, did they get short fields? Did they have big punt returns? Did they, how was Iowa able to score 40 points? And what I found was they drove the field and completed a ton of forward passes and looked like a modern football team.
Yeah.
Up and down the field on last Saturday. So I was really impressed with the offensive output of Iowa. I might be some fool's gold based on the opponent, but there's some real talent there, and there's some real stink starting to come off of that unit that they've gathered over the last few years.
It's a great way to put it. There's hardly been a piece of this Iowa receiving core that's inspired confidence. I'll say this. The first half was about as ugly as Iowa football typically is. It was, 6-0 at the half.
There were a lot of jokes online. Much was made about the 6-0 score at halftime.
But then enter Reese Vanderzee, who the broadcast made a note in the first half of saying, hey, he's the only true freshman on the 2 deep for the Iowa Hawkeyes. And then lo and behold, the man goes off. He catches 5 passes for 66 yards. Most of that in the second half. He catches 2 touchdowns. The Hawkeyes had, I believe, 3 receiving touchdowns on the day, which they had, 2 wide receiver touchdowns all of last season, something like that. I mean, it was just, we were just breaking records left and right in Iowa City. The Clones, on the other hand, they come in with Rocco Beck at quarterback. And by now, if you've listened to our podcast, you know his story. Truly came out of nowhere in the wake of the sports gambling scandal in Ames last season. Iowa State returns a top 5 production rating, according to the SP+. They're as veteran a unit as Iowa is going to face all year long. I don't know that looking at this game on paper, you go, yeah, Iowa State is going to march into Iowa City and win this game. But I told you back in the preseason, I have this weird feeling that Iowa State figures out a way how to get it done in Ames. They did it last time, in Iowa City. They did it last time that they played against the Hawkeyes on the road. There's just something in the water that I must be drinking that's giving me this confidence that the Clones can get it done. I need to see a lot more on the ground from the Clones this week. They were not really able to do much against North Dakota.
86 yards on the ground against North Dakota.
Yeah, Abu Sama was kind of MIA in a game that I really thought this was going to be an excellent tune-up for the rivalry game impending. But, Iowa State figured out a way to score points. I like the way that their defense played. They didn't get any sacks, but their pass rush was harassing the quarterback a little bit. I don't know. I feel like Iowa State has a good enough defense. Plus, I like Rocco Beck way more than I like Cade McNamara. I'm going to go with the Clones plus the 2.5 here. And I may totally regret this, but, it's one of those things I've been saying for a couple months now. I'm going to stick it out. Go Matt Campbell.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the type of game this will probably be, it's probably going to be low scoring. It's probably going to be a defensive slugfest. That's typically what this ball game is every single year. I think we're on like a 4 or 5 year streak of it hitting the under and staying under 40 points. So, man, I'm just really concerned about Iowa State's ability to run the football. You touched on that, but also stop the run. They let North Dakota kind of run wild on them last week, 174 yards on the ground. North Dakota's one scoring drive, and this is kind of the reason Iowa State didn't put up more than 21 points. North Dakota had a 12.5-minute drive in the first half in that game.
Yes,
and they also had more first downs than Iowa State throughout the game. So the defense did its job. They held them to only 3 points. They forced a turnover or 2 and kept them off the scoreboard for the most part. But getting off the field was really concerning. I think that's why I'm leaning Iowa in this one. Would not shock me in the slightest to see Iowa State pull out a win in this one. But I think I'm leaning Iowa. The home field advantage just showed me more running the football and stopping the run last week than what Iowa State did. Iowa State's capable of it. We've seen it in the past, but I don't know, for whatever reason, it just didn't show last week, and that's why I'm leaning Iowa.
I think if Iowa State can get some more pressure on Cade McNamara, especially in the first half, McNamara was pressured more than in the second half of the ball game, and he looked lost. That was when all the jokes were coming out. Nothing changed. Same old Iowa. If Iowa State can ramp up that pass rush and find ways to get McNamara off his spot, obviously this is a much better secondary that the Hawkeyes are going to go against. But they've got to be able to make Iowa one-dimensional. They've got to make them run the football so that they can key in on that run. If Campbell's group is able to do this in that 3-3-5, then heck yeah, man. I think the Clones are absolutely able to do this. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit nervous about Iowa State plus the 2.5. Look, I like a good chaos pick. Again, my extended family, they're all just bleeding Hawkeye, and so I'm probably not making the
You're gonna sit at the kids' table for Thanksgiving.
I think so.
If that comes to fruition.
I think so. I might not get that golf club. I'm hoping for at Christmas. But other than that, I think this is going to be a wildly entertaining game. Two great fan bases. I'm going to be locked in on this one. Again, this is 2:30 p.m. on CBS.
I'm excited about the quarterback matchup in this game, which feels weird for Cyhawk. I couldn't tell you the last time I've been excited about the quarterback matchup in this game. And also love that you're dropping Christmas gift hints on a week 2 preview show. That did not slip past me.
That's right. TP5s, 60-degree wedge. What else can I put in the algorithm here? You mentioned the quarterback battle. Let's go to the nightcap where number 15 Tennessee and number 24 NC State are playing in Charlotte. This is a 6:30 p.m. game on ESPN. You talk about a fun quarterback battle. This is it. Now, NC State didn't exactly blow the Catamounts off the field the other night when they opened against Western Carolina. Tennessee eviscerated whatever little Chattanooga put on the field as far as a football program. And Nico looked amazing for his first time starting a regular season game. I know he played in the bowl game. I know he beat the Iowa Hawkeyes just last bowl season. But the Tennessee Volunteers might be good at football. And that is really concerning, I think, for college football as a whole. What grabs your attention the most in this football game?
You said it off the top, it's the quarterback matchup because Nico versus Grayson McCall, young gun versus a guy that's been around the block and seen a lot of college football. I love that. I love that quarterback matchup. I love this game. I think it's on the schedule and people saw it in the spring. If they were looking forward to some games, it might have seemed a little weird, but these are two teams that are trying to take the next step in their conference. They're kind of on the same tier within their own conference, SEC and ACC. And I love that they're matching up. It's a great gut check game for both of these programs, I feel like. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's Nico.
Yeah,
I've caught the Nico fever, man. I took him on my fantasy team this summer.
Sure.
Everything that he did on the field last week, he only played one half of football and he put up over 300 yards passing and just dropped some absolute dimes on a hapless Chattanooga defense. So I've caught the Nico fever. I don't know if there's a cure. Maybe it's that 3-3-5 that NC State and Tony Gibson are going to run. That's certainly made a lot of solid quarterbacks look really silly and see a lot of ghosts in its time. But I'm excited to see what he can do on the field against a really good defense.
Yeah, NC State's going to have to get off after Iamaleava if they want to keep him in check. I was watching a film breakdown of what Nico was able to do, and some of those throws that he was making this past weekend, man, again, against the Mocs defense, an FCS opponent, with some of the vision and the touch that he displayed, the guys that were breaking down the film were like, this is not normal. I mean, This is truly next level stuff. Plus you throw in the fact that he's like 6'5" and just fluid as water itself. I think we might be looking at the next great talent at the quarterback position in a landscape where, quite honestly, the national storyline has been dominated this week about how little that position group has produced at an elite level, right? I mean, a lot of folks digging up the 2022 quarterback rankings and, tearing 247 apart for the 5 stars and whatnot. Iamaleava looks as good as advertised. Let me spin it around to the other side, though. Grayson McCall, talk to me about what week 1 did for you. Obviously, he found Casey Concepcion late, and I think for 3 touchdowns. I think he was basically all of their offense. What did Grayson show you in week 1? What do you need to see against Tennessee, given the fact that pass rush, man, they're going to be coming with their ears pinned back?
Yeah, he showed a lot of composure, and Western Carolina is not your typical FCS scrub. They've certainly built their program up a lot. Now, they shouldn't have been anywhere close in that game. Don't hear what I'm not saying.
Yeah.
But that second half showed me a lot of Grayson McCall. He really turned it on down the stretch, made some really nice throws to Casey Concepcion, got the offense out of a funk that they were kind of in mid-third quarter and led them back in a comeback victory. They were down 21-17 at the end of the third quarter, but that fourth quarter was really, really good from him leading that. And Jordan Waters was certainly a big part of that as well, with a couple big touchdown runs. So, I mean, he has a ton of experience. I don't think anything necessarily is going to phase him from a pass rush standpoint, but that offensive line has got to give him a little bit more help. They gave up 9 tackles for loss against the Catamounts. It's not a great recipe for success going up against the defensive line that Tennessee is going to bring.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting. This is a neutral site game, but it's an NC State home game. So that means they're allowed to bring recruits to this. Apparently, this is a premier recruiting weekend for Dave Dorn and the Pack. A little weird to bring them to a neutral site venue, isn't it?
Yeah, I did not know that was the case, honestly. I'm looking at their schedule now, and I'm trying to figure out if there's another game that recruits might be interested in. There's really not on the schedule. They go to Clemson this year.
Oh, there you go.
Don't play Florida State. Don't play Miami. Their next best home game that's actually on campus might be Syracuse. Nope, they play them on the road. Yeah, Syracuse might be their next best home game other than this one. So
Yikes.
I guess that makes sense in this context. But yeah, that's a little frustrating for the recruiting staff.
Different kind of orange there for sure. Well, so when I look at this game, Tennessee's favored by 7.5. Again, I'm looking, especially since it's a neutral site, or you kind of have to throw the home field advantage out the window, right? Tennessee's going to travel well.
Right.
It's going to be a fun environment, but I don't know that you're going to have a home field one way or the other. So I just have to kind of look at both sides of the ball. Who do I believe is better on the offensive side? Who do I believe is going to play more, shut down defense? Who's got the better pass rush? Trey, the answer is Tennessee to me on all of these boxes. And so as high as I am, and I know you are on the Wolfpack, this is one that I thought, if Tennessee shows some rust, the Pack can spring an upset here. That was kind of my thought all offseason long. But after what I saw from Tennessee last week, and not the score, but how buttoned up they looked marching down the field, defense, they didn't have any busts. They didn't have any breaks. The pass rush looked lethal. I know it's week 1, but boy, it's hard not to think, you know what? I think Josh Heupel's crew is finally ready to really make some noise and make a playoff push. And I think it starts Saturday night in Charlotte.
This will be the first one I agree with you on so far this show, Mitch.
Sorry
From
about
just
that.
a pure eyeball test standpoint, Tennessee might have looked like the best team in the country last week. And I know opponents factor into that, whatever, but you're absolutely right. The offense and defense were both firing on all cylinders from the word go. I think that's going to be a little too much for NC State. I think NC State will hang around. I think this will be an entertaining game still in the third quarter, but Tennessee will probably pull away late.
Yeah, I hope this game is entertaining. That outcome would be great to see Tennessee, let it be a great game, and then Iamaleava have a statement moment, right? Lead a drive that you just go, there's the dagger. There it is right there. I think that would be really fun to watch. Obviously, it would mean that we got our picks right, too. So those are our big 3. Again, write in. Let us know your picks for Texas, Michigan, Iowa State, and Iowa, and Tennessee and NC State. We'd love to hit you up and respond at 3TechPod is where you can find us on our social media. Let's move now, Trey, to Saturday's storylines presented by Baller Pickleball. Again, you can use our code, that's 3TechPod, for 10% off at ballerpickleball.com. Got a little 3-pack here I'll let you lead off with. Arkansas at Oklahoma State, Kansas State at Tulane, or Georgia Tech at Syracuse. All of those are in the morning slate on Saturday. Prime second screen watching. Which of those 3 games intrigues you the most?
It's got to be Arkansas, Oklahoma State for me. a really interesting road trip for Arkansas to a Big 12 team. Don't see that happen a ton with an SEC going to a Big 12 stadium. So I liked what I saw from Arkansas last week, albeit against putrid competition from Arkansas Pine Bluff. But the 1-2 punch of Taylon Green and Jaquindon Jackson could be really exciting. They could run the ball really well. Taylon Green looked really good throwing the ball as well. So offense looked a little better than I expected. Again, I know they were playing against absolute worst competition possible, but no offense to the Lions. I think they are Arkansas Pine Bluff. But I was more impressed with the Arkansas offense than I thought I would be. Oklahoma State took care of business. I picked South Dakota State as my upset pick last week, and maybe that was more for fun than just actually thinking it could happen. Whatever, we can debate that. But they looked really good in handling a feisty South Dakota State team that didn't want to go away.
Yeah.
I was really impressed by what Oklahoma State did last week as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting quarterback matchup, Alan Bowman and Taylon Green. 7-year guy versus a guy that's kind of bounced around a little bit. So feels like maybe the guy that makes the fewer mistakes leads his team to a victory in this one. I'm going with Alan Bowman cautiously.
Oh boy, yeah.
But would it surprise me if Arkansas went in there and had this a barn burner in the fourth quarter? Absolutely not.
So I might break my rubric, whatever my rubric is. I might be ready to break it because I watched an Oklahoma State film this morning, and Alan Bowman, man, when he was slinging it at Grapevine High School and leading them to a district championship and then going to Texas Tech, I really thought he was the next great gunslinger to go out to Lubbock, right? I mean, he just oozed Mike Leach offense. And I thought that was going to be tremendous. And obviously his career has been derailed multiple times due to injury. And then he went to Michigan for a second. And now he's at Oklahoma State and, needs to get a LinkedIn profile. I don't trust him to pull Oklahoma State away from Arkansas. Now, Ollie Gordon might be able to do it. But the way Arkansas played offense last week makes me think, you know what? There might be something to Sam Pittman just taking his hands off the wheel and saying, you know what, Bobby Petrino, go cook.
Bobby, take the wheel.
Bobby, take the wheel, not the handlebars. I know he didn't get to do it at Texas A&M, and, we as Aggies are really upset about that. But Arkansas achieved a perfect efficiency score last week, Trey. I know Cousin Shane from that SEC pod called him Arkansas peanut butter. I mean, the Lions were way outmatched, right? I mean, truly Arkansas was playing against air. So actually you'd hope that they would go 10 for 10 on drives. But the way that offense operated, and they had the running game going, and they had motion, and Taylon Green can roll out of the pocket, Oklahoma State has a very athletic defense. And yet there is something to, I think, the 1-2 punch of Taylon Green and Jaquindon Jackson running the football that makes me think Arkansas can keep this close. I think Oklahoma State still wins this game. They're at home. They caused a lot of havoc last week against South Dakota State. So I'll take the Pokes to win. But 7.5, give me the candy. And I'll take Arkansas plus 7.5 on the betting line.
I love it. I think I'm going to lean Arkansas plus 7.5 as well. I think they'll keep this one at the very least close. I think this will be a really fun game to have on your second screen, like you mentioned.
I agree. Another game that I'm really excited to watch, number 17, Kansas State, 10-point favorites at Tulane. Little sleepy early morning contest in the French Quarter, 11 a.m. on ESPN. The over-under, Trey, is at 47.5. And I tell you what, with as much as both teams want to run the ball, Mekhi Hughes for Tulane, DJ Giddens had a big-time week for Kansas State in week 1. I think I'm leaning the under here. I don't know if I was laying shekels on this game, if I would necessarily touch that 10 spot. It seems a little funky to me, but I would take the under here. I think both teams are going to run the ball. Neither quarterback is just known for throwing the ball all that much. We didn't see Avery Johnson slinging a ton in their win last week. But Darian Mensah, who came out of nowhere to win this quarterback job for the Green Wave, 200 yards passing, very efficient, 10 of 12. But it's clear that's not the emphasis of this offense. When they do throw it, though, they're slinging it out to Mario Williams. So I think Kansas State certainly needs to be careful in this one. A lot of people have the Wildcats on upset alert. I don't know that I'd go all that way to say Kansas State loses this game for a second year in a row. Is that correct? Didn't Tulane beat them last year?
They beat them a couple years. I think it was
Was that 2 years?
I think it was the Cotton Bowl year.
Okay, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I'm with you that this is going to be a really interesting game. And anytime, my rule, anytime a Power 4 team goes to a Group of 5 stadium, you have my attention.
Yes.
So I think both teams want to do the similar things on offense. Like you're saying, they want to run the ball. They want to establish dominance on the ground. Last week, that was definitely the case for Kansas State. It was a lot of DJ Giddens. It was a lot of Joe Jackson. It was a lot of Dylan Edwards on the ground. And I think that they'll have a lot of success doing that. Tulane, really underrated defensive front. I feel like I've been beating that drum all off season with the defensive interior of Tulane. So it could pose some problems for Kansas State. But I think, especially with an offensive line that's still trying to gel, replacing a lot of starters. So I think Tulane covers this spread. And you're absolutely right. I would probably never bet that with real money. But to make a pick for the show, give me Tulane plus the candy at home. Probably a big crowd on campus for one of the biggest games on campus in quite some time at Tulane. So, yeah, give me the points.
Remember last year when they played Ole Miss, that was a contest until late, right? So Tulane, I
forgot about the Ole Miss game. That was a big game last year. So
yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, different team, new head coach, whole lot of things that are different. But like you said, great defensive front for Tulane, and the Green Wave has some dudes in the secondary as well. Pleasant had a 100-yard pick six last week that had reportedly scouts kind of buzzing, saying, you know what, Tulane, watch out for them. So I like the Green Wave. They're my pick to win the American. Again, I don't know that I'd go as far to say that they win this game outright. Kansas State, I think, is the better team overall, but absolutely, if I have to make a pick, Tulane plus 10. That seems to be the most logical one. So I'll roll with the under 47.5 in the Green Wave plus the 10 piece. Final game of the morning slate that draws our interest is Georgia Tech -3 at Syracuse in the Dome. It's 11 a.m. ACC Network. Trey, last year and a couple of years now, we've been asking, is Syracuse good? Is Georgia Tech good? They looked really good last week against Georgia State as well offensively.
They do. They look really, really good. Now, some of the shine has certainly come off the Florida State win, to be sure.
Absolutely.
So we might need to tap the brakes just a little bit. And the Carrier, not whatever it's called now, the former Carrier Dome is sometimes where good seasons have gone to die in the past. So this game, when I was looking over the slate and looking at the games we had to pick, I was the least excited to pick this one against the spread. Yeah. And if anyone out there is in a ESPN college pick'em pool, this was one of them on the slate this week that they give you 10 games to pick just straight up, not even against the spread, just straight up. I was like, no, 1 confidence point on this one. I was not impressed with what Syracuse did against Ohio last week. They pulled away late, but it was a dogfight well into the third quarter. Not really the vote of confidence that you want going immediately after that into conference play. Mm-hmm. I really am excited to see what Georgia Tech does. It's a road game, their first true road game of the year. They're not getting to play the underdog role anymore. They're not getting to play the surprise role anymore. Syracuse they have Syracuse's full attention in this one, and I'm kind of leaning Syracuse to win this game. Despite what we saw on the field last week from the Orange, I think maybe you're holding something back against Ohio to save it for an upstart Georgia Tech team. I like Syracuse at home this one to at least cover the spread.
I can't say that I disagree with you. That win last week, again, like you mentioned, if you just look at the final score, you go, okay, yeah, fine. Great little tune-up game against the Bobcats and Tim Alvin. But that was a game that was a nip and tuck affair late into the second half. And again,
17-16 at one point, midway through the third quarter.
Yeah, and as much, listen, we love Maction here. We love Group of 5 teams. With all due respect to Ohio, that was a bunch of second stringers at a Group of 5 school that Syracuse was playing. They lost like 12 starters after the spring portal, 8 or 12, something like that. It was just an exodus away from Athens, Ohio. So week 1 jitters, sure. I agree. I'm very concerned as someone who's at least sitting shotgun in the Sickos Ramblin' Wreck Express, I am very concerned that this is a road game. I don't really know what I think about Syracuse yet. They were able to run the ball fairly effectively, and Aronde Gadsden is on my fantasy team for a reason. When Kyle McCord needed to move the chains or he needed to throw the ball to the end zone, guess who he was finding? His big old tight end. Does Georgia Tech have someone that can cover that? I don't know, but I do feel confident enough that they can take away the run, and hopefully they will put Kyle McCord in a situation where he has to go beat them. Can he do it? Probably so. Again, being at home, I think it's an advantage. But man, after what Georgia Tech did against Florida State, when nobody believed in them, they looked decent enough against Georgia State. I'm going to pick the Rec to go up and win this game. They're a favorite for a reason. I'll be honest, I was shocked that they were the betting favorite going up to the Dome this week. I fully expected Syracuse to be a favorite, maybe just by a point or two, but I expected Vegas to reflect that Syracuse was at home with traditionally a decent defense and an offense that did put up some points last week. What does Vegas know? I don't know, but I'm going to steer into it. I'm going to take the Jackets minus the 3 here to close.
To give you just a little bit more confidence, Mitch, the Cuse did give up 255 yards on the ground to the Bobcats.
Heck yeah, baby.
Week. So,
oh yeah,
that bodes well for the ground and pound attack of Georgia Tech.
Pedal to the metal for the Rec. We like that. Afternoon slate. A couple games of interest here. We've got another 3-pack, and I think I know where you'd like to start here. The I-35 showdown, UTSA and Texas State. Texas State is a 1-point favorite at home, 3 p.m. on ESPNU. This is a pick 'em, essentially. Texas State has never beaten UTSA. They're 0-5 in this rivalry matchup. Can the Cats pull it off at home? And if so, why?
If they're going to pull it off, it's going to be an extraordinary offensive effort and just holding on for dear life, most likely. On the defensive side of the ball, we're rooting for the Bobcats to win the Sun Belt West. We're openly campaigning for that. But the defense is obviously what is going to hold them back from that goal if they don't reach it. So they've got to put up a really elite offensive game plan. They've got to rely on that offense. Jordan McLeod has got to pass the ball efficiently, avoid turnovers, and pick up some big first downs with his legs. I think it's all going to be kind of on him to figure that out and just score more points than the other team. Sometimes football is really simple, but both of these teams let inferior opponents kind of play catch up a little bit late in their games last week against Kennesaw State and Lamar. So the defensive depth questions are certainly there for both teams. Score more points than the other guy, match what they do, and find a way to win a shootout.
I'm going to take the Roadrunners here. I think the talent advantage still favors UTSA. It's not like it's a far road trip. I don't think Texas State is going to be an overly daunting place for them to play. No offense at Bobcat fans, but it's not a huge stadium. And UTSA, let's be honest, has more of a tradition of winning right now than Texas State does. Bobcats made some explosive upsets happen last year. They were the darlings of G5 college football, and still they would go out and they would lose to Arkansas State and give up 77 points. I think there's still a little bit of that in this Texas State team, specifically because the defense is not as deep as the Bobcats would prefer it be, right? UTSA, while they didn't blow Kennesaw State out, handled the Owls convincingly. They did let them back in that game a little bit late, but to me, when I was watching that, it was never in doubt. I thought the offense ran the ball effectively, and the defense has enough guys on that 2 deep to where if this does turn into some sort of rock fight, I favor the Roadrunners and a veteran defense more than Texas State. I'll tell you what, though, I would love for just unbridled rivalry game chaos to happen. I would love for quarters to go by without any points, maybe turnovers and just stuffing guys at the goal line. And then I would love a quarter that has like 44 points given up, just air raid, big broken tackles. I want the full experience in San Marcos Saturday. I think this game could deliver that.
The latter certainly seems more possible in my mind. But, I was looking it up. You said the crowd might not be intimidating. There's not a lot of seats left in that stadium. I pulled up the primary ticket market. Not a lot of seats left in that stadium.
Awesome.
Now, how many of those fans will be wearing blue and orange? Because it is literally less than an hour drive from stadium to stadium. Don't know. But should be a really fun environment in San Marcos. And if you win, you get to jump in the river. Who doesn't love that?
That's right. Group of 5 guys. Speaking of G5 Twitter, group of 5 guys will be tailgating out there. They're doing a live show from out in San Marcos. So head out that way and hang out with them. That'll be a really, really fun time.
Ivar's River Pub and the Mansky Roll place, if you need a recommendation in San Marcos. There's a ton of good food in San Marcos.
There you go. We need to make a podcast road trip down to San Marcos. I'd be down to figure that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got credentialed for SMU and BYU. So, first of all, shameless plug, follow us on Twitter for Friday night's game as the Cougars come to Dallas. We'd love to have you along for that ride. But, maybe we start getting credentialed at some other places. We go down to Texas State, hang out a little bit.
Absolutely.
Be a lot of fun. Let's stay in the Lone Star State as far as team affiliation. Baylor goes to Salt Lake City, Trey, and the Utah Utes are number 11 in the country. They are 14-point favorites. I'll be honest, this line's a little bit lower than I expected it to be. It's 2:30 p.m. on Fox. Baylor's new offense put up a ton of points against Tarleton State last week, but the wheels fell off a little bit. DeQuan Finn started to feel himself, perhaps, through a couple of interceptions. I'm still really concerned about Baylor's defense when they get up against a real opponent. I think Utah is the easy favorite in this game, but you throw in the fact that Baylor's defense doesn't have a lot of horses for courses, I think, on the back end. And this one, I think, is pretty open and shut. Utah minus the points for me.
I'm with you. DeQuan Finn had his moments last week and looked really, really good at times, but then, 2 interceptions. You can't do that, especially on the road in Utah. Also, Utah has lost one true home game since the start of the 2021 season and 2 since the start of 2019. They're just almost unbeatable up in Salt Lake City at altitude. So this is a Baylor program that's been up there in recent past, so they know what they're getting into, unlike certain teams. But I think Utah covers this one relatively easily.
Over to the SEC country we go. We've got South Carolina at Kentucky. The Wildcats, 10-point favorites. Again, 2:30 p.m. on ABC. A lot has been made about South Carolina and their struggles against Old Dominion last week. That was a game that was very much in doubt. The Monarchs were leading with just a handful of minutes left. Shane Beamer, got done with his on-field interview in the post game, and you saw him roll his eyes. Like you could tell he was ready to catch hell for this one. It was not an inspiring win for the Gamecocks. Norris Sellers, listen, shout out to his road to East Carolina in 2027, according to my College Football 25 file. But boy, the man did not look like a Power 4 quarterback in this one. Meanwhile, Kentucky's game shortened by lightning. They had to call this in the third quarter over Southern Miss. But Trey, you noted in our run sheet, Kentucky looked really good when they did get to play.
Yeah, Brock Vandergriff was throwing the football in ways that they were hoping Will Levis and Devin Leary would the last couple of years. He looked really, really good throwing the football when they actually got to be on the field. This looks like a Kentucky offense that might be revolutionized a little bit, might have a little bit more juice than we've seen the last couple of years. Now, this has been a very low-scoring game in recent history. South Carolina's won the last 2, 17-14 last year in Columbia, and 24-14 the last time that it was in Lexington. So could be a points at a premium situation. That's what this game has turned into in recent years. But, man, it's hard not to like what we saw from Kentucky on offense, especially when they're at home. You compare it to what South Carolina put on the field last week at home.
I'm going to take Kentucky to break this trend, and I'll take them to cover at home. Again, better offense, I think, favors Kentucky after what we saw from Brock Vandergriff. A little disappointed he didn't keep the phone holstered on his hip pocket like apparently he walks around Lexington with, but I digress. Better defense favors Kentucky. I think better chance at explosive plays now that Vandergriff can take the top off that defense favors Kentucky. Give me the Cats minus the points.
Yeah, give me the Cats minus the points as well. I'm starting to really like what I see from Kentucky. They might be a sleeper team in the SEC this year.
Oh, no. Are we getting on the Mark Stoops bandwagon? Is this a weird alternate universe?
Whew. Don't tell late November Trey that, but yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go to the not afternoon window. Let's try that again. We'll go to the evening window, and we start with a game that a lot of people will have their eyes on. If you're not interested in Tennessee and NC State, okay, fair enough. Your cup of coffee might be in Lincoln, Nebraska, where the Cornhuskers host Colorado. The Huskers, 7.5-point favorites, 6:30 p.m. on NBC or the Peacock Network. You can come up with your own nicknames for that. What are you most excited to see in this game? Are you excited to watch the offense, Colorado, Nebraska? What's the quarterback battle doing for you? There's a lot of storylines to kind of pick your hands over at the buffet here.
Yeah, I need more Dylan Raiola in my life right now. After what I got to see against UTEP, I'm excited to see us step up in competition. I know much has been made about the Colorado defense, but this is a step up in competition. And I'm really excited to see Travis Hunter take on a good pass defense. Yeah. Shadir Sanders and Travis Hunter, that connection survive against a really good pass defense? Nebraska top 10 in the nation in pass defense a year ago. Some of that was schedule related, but there's a lot of talent in that secondary. So I'm excited to see what happens. I know we got a taste of that last year, and there was some, big plays that were given up by the Nebraska secondary. Can Nebraska respond? Can Nebraska figure out a way to look more like their end of year self on defense than they were in that game early last year?
I think there's something to be said in this game for Prime and his coaching staff not being prepared for the late game moment. They started their coaching, or at least Prime started his coaching tenure by beating TCU in a crazy offensive game. TCU ended up not being very good, and we all know how Colorado's season went after that. I think there's something to Shadir Sanders playing against a very good secondary. I think the running game, I'm really concerned about Colorado being able to run the football in this game. And Trey, after last week, I've got no other choice but to consider the fact that late game play calling might be a real issue for Colorado. Prime and his staff might have a little bit of Mario Cristobal in them, given the way that they almost handed North Dakota State that game when it should have been done and dusted. I'm going to take Colorado plus the points because I think this is going to be a very close rivalry game. I think Nebraska is going to be up. They want to get revenge for the blowout that happened in Boulder last season. I think that'll result in some really good things. I think it could result in some mistakes. Dylan Raiola is a true freshman. It's his second career start. There are going to be mistakes that he makes, but I think I'm going to trust Matt Rule and the athletes on Nebraska's side, specifically the better defense, to find a way to get stops late in this game. So Colorado covers, Nebraska wins.
I think Nebraska covers the spread. You said it there right at the end. It's a way better defense for my money, and they're at home. Nebraska covers the spread. There's going to be some fireworks early, certainly, but I think Dylan Raiola will adjust, settle in. And it's not like he's playing the 85 Bears on defense on that other sideline. So it's another good opportunity for him to get some good reps.
If you're Nebraska, do you just not test Travis Hunter? Do you let Colorado kind of eliminate one side of the field, or do you say, you know what, Dylan, let's take some shots?
I think you just run a vert at Travis Hunter every single play until he can't play offense anymore. Like, I don't know why more teams don't do that to kind of neutralize him on both sides of the field. But yeah, I mean, that could certainly be a good strategy. He's certainly the best athlete on the field whenever he's on the field, either offense or defense. But I think that you could see them going away from his direction quite a bit.
Yeah, I agree. That'll be a fun one. I think that'll be a game that is certainly on our second monitor as we're watching Tennessee and NC State, right? Final game in the evening slate, App State at Clemson. Clemson 17.5-point favorites. Boy, I think the hook could be critical in this one. 7 p.m. ACC Network. You asked in our run sheet on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely is a letdown or sleepwalk upset on the table here, a la Boston College over Florida State? Your answer?
I'm sitting at about a 4.5 because I think Clemson is better than Florida State. I think I hope they're
You
better
hope.
than Florida State for Clemson fans' sake. But this is a plucky App State team that shouldn't be taken lightly.
Yep.
Joey Aguilar can certainly sling it. It's a really fun offense that they've got. If Cade Klubnik makes a couple mistakes, this thing could get really dicey really quickly.
I agree. This line makes me nervous. And the fact that they throw in the hook, I feel like I'm being baited into taking App State plus the points, but you know what? I'm just down the road from the stockyards. Call me a cow led to the slaughter because I'm in the trough, baby. Give me App State plus the points. I'm going to ride with the Nears here. I do think Clemson wins this game, but very similarly to what happened with Florida State, where we thought that they would be able to get that offense rolling. We thought that they would be able to win comfortably, not covering the spread, but comfortably, and it didn't happen. There is something to be said that Cade Klubnik has to show he can do it consistently. He's infinitely more talented than DJ Uiagalelei. He has infinitely more, I think, tools at his offensive disposal. But at the same time, those wide receivers, man, they were not able to get a lot of separation against Georgia, albeit a great Bulldog secondary. But there just isn't a proof of concept that I've seen that makes me think that Clemson can not only win this game, but pull away and blow a very good G5 team out of the water. This is the Mountaineers Super Bowl, right? As far as
it's their chance to show that they should be in the college football playoff over a Boise State, over a Tulane, over a Liberty.
And then exactly. And that leads into Liberty here in a couple weeks. I mean, my goodness, if they compete in this one and then go beat Liberty and win the Sun Belt, yeah, it's the nearest world and we're just living in it. I think App State's up for this one. I think they lose by, 14-17 eventually. Maybe Phil Maffa kind of helps ice this game away for Clemson. But until I see something on the offensive side, I'm looking at an awesome half team. And I think App State's style of play is going to be able to find a few points here and there.
Well, and I'm glad you said that because the new running clock rules of the last couple of years heavily favor plucky underdogs that come in with a game plan, can execute a game plan. You can see that banner right there. I keep pointing the wrong way. You see that banner behind me? You don't have to tell me about how plucky Appalachian State can be in a sleepy week 2 matchup. Yeah. Mitch, give me the Mountaineers plus the points.
Oh, younger Mitch and younger Trey. If I could tell you to stay home that week, I would. App State plus the number. Lock it in. Let's go turbo offense here to finish it out. We've got a couple more games to chat about and a couple of lines that, Trey, they don't pass the smell test to me. Number one, Maryland only 8.5-point favorites against Michigan State, a Michigan State team that could not get out of their own way against I don't think a very good Florida Atlantic team. Maryland looked awesome in week 1, not only throwing the ball, but running it, able to sit on that clock, take the air out of the ball, and then burst a big 20, 30-yard gain when they want.
And they did it without MJ Morris that we hyped up all summer for no reason.
They did, dadgummit. MJ didn't even win the freaking battle. Why is this line so low?
Got me. I have no idea. That makes no sense to me. Maybe a brand name.
Maryland's at home.
Maybe a brand name of Michigan State being a legacy brand. I have no idea why this is 8.5. So it terrifies me, but it's too sweet to not say Maryland should run away with that one.
They really should. The other line is Kansas, only 5.5-point favorites at Illinois. I texted you about this, and I was like, you know what? I was about to lock this in a pick'em league that I'm in as my triple play of the week. Like, if you get it right, it's good for 3. If you get it wrong, it's also good for 3. And then I looked into this and went, hold on. I watched Illinois play against, I think it was Eastern Illinois in their home opener. Luke Altmaier is who we thought he was. The box score says he threw 4 touchdowns. My eyes told me he should have thrown a couple interceptions as well. I mean, if East Illinois defenders could catch the ball, Altmaier did not look good. And yet you've got Kansas coming in, everybody's darling here in the preseason. They're not even a touchdown favorite over the Illini. Like, something smells weird here. I'm steering as far away from this game as I can.
Yeah, I hate that line. This was a 34-23 ball game last year when they played in Lawrence. I'm trying to remember if Daniels was healthy for that game. I honestly can't remember if that was a Daniels game or a Jason Bean game, but on paper, this should be a really nice road win for Kansas. They should be able to run the ball pretty well. They might be able to get a couple turnovers with an underrated secondary against Luke Altmaier, like you said, that can be a little bit of reckless with the ball. But man, 5 points is just 5.5 points is just a really weird line. I'll go out on a limb and say Kansas covers on the road. It'll be an interesting place to play, but Kansas just has too much positive momentum right now.
That's definitely the game that's the direction I lean as well. I mean, like I said, I was going to lock Kansas in and go cash the ticket. So if I have to make a play here, I'm taking Kansas. He did play in that game last season. That was the first game that he played in. 21 of 29, 277 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns and a pick. He also carried the ball 11 times for 24 yards. So, it's on the road.
Shut him down pretty good on the ground.
Yeah, they did. They locked him up. Take for that what you will. Maybe it's closer than what we're originally thinking, but give me Kansas by a touchdown? Come on, yeah, right? Sure.
I don't know. Like, I didn't watch Illinois closely enough last week to know if they have – well, yeah, probably not a lot of people outside of the greater Urbana-Champaign area watch them very closely, but I don't know that they have the defensive interior talent that they had last year to kind of shut down that run game. I'll confess that I'm ignorant on that. Illini fans, if you're listening, let me know. Maybe you guys have the next Jason Newton on the inside there. But I think that Kansas running the football can help them to really just take the energy out of that place pretty quickly.
Let's go to the state of Alabama. We've got Auburn -13. They're hosting Cal on the Plains. Then you've got South Florida coming to Tuscaloosa to take on Alabama. The Tide are 31-point favorites after their dismantling of Western Kentucky. I think for this duo, Trey, I'm really interested to see how Byron Brown plays for South Florida. Look, Alabama's going to win this game. I think they're probably going to win it going away. I don't think we have any Tampa monsoons to keep the Tide down this year.
What a game that was last year.
Wait, there were real moments in time when we thought that the South Florida Bulls were going to beat Alabama and Nick Saban. That was what a time to be alive. But I'm really curious to see how Byron Brown in decent weather, I think, plays against the Tide. It's a younger secondary, but a very talented one. That's what I think I'll be locked in on as far as these two games go.
Yeah, I mean, Cal gave Auburn all they could handle last year out on the West Coast in a really
probably should have won
that
game.
They should have won that game in a wacky one after dark. So I'm interested to see more of a proof of concept from this Auburn offense. You noted in our run sheet that they basically just ran 4 routes the entire game last week against Alabama A&M, and that's going to be really successful against Alabama A&M. It might be successful against Cal, but it's a more talented defense certainly than they faced last week, and they've got a really great offensive player in Jaden Ott on the other side of the ball that they have to account for. So I'm interested to see more of a proof of concept from Auburn and see how that looks.
Memphis, are they looking ahead to Florida State? That's a question I'm asking, as they're 18.5-point favorites over Troy, the Troy team that lost to Nevada at home. The Jared Parker era off to a terrible start there in Troy. Memphis looks like they might not only be, the team that I think a lot of people are going to pick to win over Florida State. They might be favored in that game, Trey. Florida State's over-under. They're live betting over-under for the season. Do you know what that number dropped down to?
I'm going to guess 4.5.
5.5.
Whew, okay, they're a little bit more optimistic than I am because I am penciling Memphis in as a loss at this point.
Okay, there you go. So 18.5-point favorites. If you had to bet this, are the Tigers looking ahead? Do they take care of business?
It's interesting because, Nevada was a team that got a week 0 tune-up and almost beat SMU. So they might be better than our perception was preseason. But when those matchups came out and that line came out, I kind of circled Nevada, and shout out to Garrett for picking them as their dog of the week.
Yeah.
To cover that spread last week. It's interesting when you have a tune-up game and the other team doesn't, right? Like a lot of times when talent is at least relatively even, that can kind of win out. And we saw that with Nevada. I don't think Troy is as bad as they showed last week, but Memphis is looking to prove some points, and Memphis is not going to let up if they're relatively close to the spread. So as a tiebreaker for me, give me Memphis to cover that.
Yeah, the Seth Hennigan experience, baby. I think they're just going to throw the ball all over Troy. I didn't like at all what I saw from Troy's offense last week. So give me the Tigers as well. Finally, we've got a late night trifecta. You and I were joking. This is going to have to be on the TV when we're recording the live show here from Casa de Mason this weekend. You've got Texas.
Lots of talk on the leftovers about these 3 games as well.
That's right. Amen to that. We've got Texas Tech on the Palouse. Defense optional, was not seen in Lubbock last week against Abilene Christian. Boise State at Oregon. Again, another scenario where I don't know that the Broncos certainly are going to bring any defense to Eugene. And then Mississippi State suddenly playing a competent Arizona State team. Which of these 3 matchups has your attention?
I mean, they're all 3 spicy. I really like all 3 of these matchups. Gonna have to get a try box of some sort on the TV, but that Texas Tech Washington State game, they might score 1 billion combined points. And wacky things happen in Lubbock, wacky things happen on the Palouse. So when you put them together, it's just going to be nuts. There's going to be so many memes that come out of this football game. I'm excited for that one. Oregon, Idaho last week. Oregon didn't look great against Idaho last week.
They didn't.
And I'm interested to see how they bounce back and if they can handle business against Boise State. If they don't have their run defense ready, Ashton Gentry's going to run for a lot of yards against them. But I think they'll handle business relatively easily. Like you said, Boise did not pack a defense to Georgia Southern last week, and they're facing a much bigger test this week. And the last one, Arizona State, Mississippi State. Arizona State's favored in this game by about 7.5 points, I believe, after their performance last week. So, man, call me a Sun Devils stan. I think they cover that spread and make another statement this week.
I'll be honest. Everything in me wants me to take Mississippi State. Take an SEC roster. I know they're at the bottom of the SEC, but still the lowest tier SEC team recruits better than most other schools in the country. Look at Vanderbilt, right? What they just pulled off against Virginia Tech. That wasn't just all smoke and mirrors. They had some dudes making plays out on that field. I want to say that Mississippi State can find a way to stop Arizona State. I know Wyoming completely crushed me. I had them as the outright upset of the week, right? I was taking the Cowboys to march into Tempe and win this game. I'm rethinking a lot of things on Arizona State. But you know what? We're going to roll the dice again. I'm going to take Mississippi State plus the points. I think the Bulldogs go on the road, find a way to get it done. This is weird, betting in favor of Blake Shapen. This is an uncomfortable place for me to be right now. But you know what? I think Arizona State caught lightning in a bottle last week. I am happy to be proven wrong. I have their helmet. I love the Sun Devils. I would love the Sun Devils to be a nationally relevant team again. So if that's what happens this weekend and I'm wrong, so be it.
I don't fault your theory and I don't fault your math. I just think that I don't know. I think Arizona State has been slept on, and I'll confess that I was one of the culprits of that. And they're a more talented team than I expected. So I'm excited to see what they can do in a big step up in competition.
Absolutely. Well, write in. Let us know what you think at 3Tech Pod, all things social media, our YouTube channel as well. Do us a favor, go on over and subscribe if you are new over there. If you would leave a review on Apple or Spotify podcast, that helps us continue to grow the show. We'd really appreciate that. And we look forward to talking to you on the live show on Saturday as well. Had over 100 folks stop by the last time, I guess, week 1, when Drew Hull dropped by to guest appear. And we'd love to run that back. So do us a favor. Follow us on 3Tech Pod. You'll see when we go live, and you'll have all 3 of us talking ball.
And say hello if you're at the BYU SMU game this Friday, because we will all 3 be there.
That's right. Yeah, we can't wait to get up in press box, little field access as well. Boys might find their way into the post-game presser. We'll see. Exciting times here at 3Tech HQ for sure. Well, for Trey Reeves, I'm Mitch Mason. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Until the live show on Saturday night, so long, everybody.
Gracious him. How about that?